Moritz in Switzerland, on top of the world, high in the Engadine Valley in the Swiss Alps. For over 130 years, they've been racing down the valley to Celerina, and they continue to do so on this natural track, handmade every season. Welcome back, everybody, to our two-man race here with the second heat just about to get underway. Martin Haven and alongside me, Anne van Nieuwenhuis. And Anne, we've got a fantastic battle shaping up behind our leaders, but in the podium positions, top three.
Top three, with our fastest starter in third position, Oscar Schiepermanis with Mattis Miknius. They started a 5:05 track record push, had great speeds, great lines down the track. He's in third position, 3700ths behind the leader. In second place, we have Francesco Friedrich, only the third fastest push. We're not used to that from him. I'm sure they're gonna clean it up in the second one, try to get that push record. Had a little wobble at the top of the track, good speeds down the track, good lines down at the bottom part. He's in second place, but by a quite big margin, surprisingly 3300ths behind this guy. Back in a two-man for the first time in Europe. He's been driving four-man in the last couple of weeks. Richard Ulsner has been driving the other two-man sled, but he's back, he's in the lead, had great speed, fastest speed down the bottom of the track, great lines, 3300ths in front of Francesco Friedrich. He's back in the two-man.
Yeah, he is back in a big way, isn't he? Francesco Friedrich in second place, 3300ths back. Oscar Schiepermanis in third stage, just 400ths off Friedrich. Is Alexei Stolnev going to get in the medals? Unlikely. Justin Kripp's a long way back, 4/10ths back, but he's at the head of a hugely packed midfield with just hundreds of a second between most of our sleds. So an awful lot of potential for change, and we don't know which way it's going to go. This track has been very odd this year. It's cut differently, it's very tricky in the slow bits at the start, but also up until now, none of the second heats of either yesterday's skeleton races or this morning's women race have been faster than the first heat, and that never happens in Moritz. It always gets quicker, but I don't think I've ever seen positive degrees of ice temperature here either. It's normally minus in the teens, and it's a very different track.
It's very unusual not to get faster in the second run. Normally you also hope for a late start draw because you know the track is speeding up. The more sleds go over it, it takes away the frost of the track, it just speeds it up a little. But now with these different circumstances, it's just been very different, and we don't know if an early start draw is actually beneficial now or if it's better to be late off.
Yeah, and so many little mistakes creeping in early on that we don't traditionally see, and so it's hard to judge still for the athletes, the coaches, and for a doofus like me exactly what's going on up there at the horseshoe bar, the bratwurst and the glühwein flowing, and that's one of the sights and sounds that the brakemen can smell on their way down the track. Marcus Treichel goes off first, as he did in the first heat, so clearly it wasn't a huge benefit going on the early ice. It did seem to speed up in the first heat. Whether it continues to do so or not, it's overcast. You can see how much the wind is blowing, and again, I don't think I've ever been at a windy Moritz. Don't know what effect that's going to have on the ice. I'm not sure anybody else does either.
Yeah. He didn't have the greatest of first runs, was a little unstable everywhere in the track. So let's hope he can clean it up in the second one.
Second heat gets underway here in Moritz. Martin Haven and Anne van Nieuwenhuis watching Marcus Treichel and Christian Huber loading and safely out of the first kink.
5:32, 200ths faster than their first heat and clean around that first kink and second kink. Trying to keep it middle there in that straightaway leading up to wall.
It's a gentle meander down the hill here until you get to wall, which has got three little pressures in it to push you away.
And it's going quite slow there at that part of the track, so it's really tough to control it, but not overdrive it. He did a great job, little tap before he went into the snakes, but looking much more controlled and stable than he did in the first run.
So maybe the track is softening up a little, just giving the runners more purchase, but that will bring the speed down because there's a bit more friction. 104.5 is decent speed as you head into the forest here.
And it's looking like a better run than his first heat. More in the middle of the track. Little wobble there, but a lot straighter than he did in the first heat. 136.5.
Across the line to, okay, 108.45, 109.07. Okay, unlike yesterday, unlike this morning, the first sled down actually has gone quicker than his first heat. Most artificial tracks, that doesn't happen either because the ice tends to deteriorate. Here, it just gets less frosty and speeds up. Normally, it's so arctically cold overnight, it never deteriorates.
And here it comes at a wall with a little bit too much ride pressure, just drove it a little bit too soon out, and then that's why he hit the wall before going into snake. And here, drifting to the right side, left side of the screen, going into horseshoe. Good height there, not the highest we've seen.
So Marcus Treichel is our leader, first of our 20 sleds down in this second heat, race 6 of the BMW IBSF two-man bobsleigh World Cup. Michael Vogt of Switzerland expected, hoped for big things for him this weekend. He was in 4th place in last year's race. First heat today, 19th.
Yeah, and that was all because of a little mistake at the top of the track, and he cleaned that up really nice. 5:16, 300 improvement on their first start, and so much better around that first kink, and that's gonna help him a lot down the track to carry that speed.
Talking to former British coach Pete Gunn a little while ago, he was saying he was here for 3 weeks in Youth Olympic Games and Parabob as well, and that kink 1 was no problem then. Maybe they're getting more speed here, maybe that's the difference.
Yeah, I think the faster you go through that first speed trap, it's harder to get around the first kink. A lot better lines there at the top of the track too. Cleaned up his exit of Sunny, got nicer into Nash Dixon.
So skiddy in the first heat. He's 1.1 seconds clear. 103.2, not the greatest speed, but this sled was absolutely flying at the bottom of the track in the first run.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like he has the same speed as that first run, although it's looking a lot cleaner.
Again, if the track is warm, maybe he went with narrow runners, expecting it to be colder than it is. That gives him better control, but more friction, and a 1 second clear, 108.04. Now for comparison, 108.04 in the first heat would have left him 13th place, so rather 19th. It's still not a winning run.
No. Definitely cleaned up his mistakes, but didn't find great speeds at the bottom of the track. That might be runner choice indeed. Normally it's good to go on narrow runners here because it's giving you more control, and also on this very cold track normally it's better to have a little narrow runner. But with these conditions it might be a risk or something that could pay off to go on fatter runners.
Yeah, and it's always a gamble, and particularly when the weather has been different every day in training and is different again on race day. So 2 down, 18 to go. Next up, Xiao Yijun of China. He was the second man out in the start shed. World Cup best for him, 13th place in Lake Placid at the season start. It's only his 6th World Cup. The only time he was here before was in the 2018 Junior Worlds.
And his push bar was down even before he touched it. 5:29, little drift around kink 1, but doesn't hit any walls.
They seem to have got it sorted out a little more in their mind, or again, maybe because the track is changing, there's a little more grip and the sled doesn't skid.
Yeah, definitely with the ice getting softer, there's more control. You dig into the ice a little bit deeper, so it should be a little easier to drive around, but that also sometimes gives you issues because it's different than what you're used to in training, so you might be over-driving stuff because you're used to have more skiddy ice than what it's doing right now.
So all you can do is use all your experience and estimate what you need to do as the speed picks up down this track.
Exactly, adjust to what you're seeing, to what you're feeling, and try to ease it off a little or control it a little more. Than he's dropping off there a little bit, but keeps it nice in the middle there between leap and bridge.
1400s up from the first heat. He's creeping back towards that margin. Little better speed than Marcus Treichel at the bottom, and he has a lead, but not by much, over Michael Vogt. Well, I'm sure the Swiss were hoping for a lot more from Vogt, and I'm sure he was as well. He's got Sandra Michel back with him, healthy after 2 weeks in his sick bed, basically. Hasn't pushed since La Plan. And Vogt, I'm sure, after 4th last year, was really hoping for big things. Xiao Yijun, not a bad first run for him, and a second one that he tidied up a few of the little errors.
But you're getting into his sled.
Never easy, is it?
And his push bar was already coming down when he got his hands in, so he didn't have to worry about that anymore.
Just saw the little twitches with the steering as he was getting the sled into the first corner. Andrew Langer down there, multiple winner on this track. And next up is Benny Meyer of Austria with Markus Sammer with Benny. He started sort of in the middle of our pack, 15th of 20 sleds.
He's still struggling a little bit with injury,
Yeah.
but it's good to see him back in the field and back to pushing. 5:34, a little bit slower than their first heat.
Only 400s ahead of the Chinese sled of Xiao Yijun.
He's coming clean around that second kink, but I think there's a little build-up or softening of the ice there that puts his sled into a skid coming out of wall there.
We can see the matte look on the ice, which shows the runner marks really clearly as these big bright stripes. You don't get that on any other track, so it's still got that slight Moritz feel to it.
Really great height there, and that's gonna give him a lot of speed normally, but looks like his sled is not finding the speed.
Yeah. Speed is dropping away, the gap is growing. He was 100th behind as he sat down. He's now over 3/10 of a second away. Skid there.
Yeah, really long on bridge and long on leap.
And the speed needs 137, got 137, but not enough to close the gap, even in the final two corners where there's a little wormhole. 108.49, so the Chinese stay in the leader's box. And that is 2,600 slower than Benny went in the first heat.
Yeah.
Again, I wonder whether he's got narrow runners on, the kind that you would expect to use here in Moritz.
They're great height in the horseshoe because he went late in. It shoots him up, gets close to the roof, and has to turn it down and get it back to neutral before coming out of it. And here, exit of bridge a little high, and it pushes him to a later entrance of leap. And there again, later entrance, and you can see him bring it over to an earlier entrance in Günter Sachs again. But that's more driving than you should have.
Wife Elizabeth and baby Hendricks down there at the barriers as we get ready now for the first of our two Korean sleds. This is Suk In-jun with Kim Jin-soo behind him. Most of Kim's races have been with Yoon Jong-won, but now adding his speed to the back of Suk's sled. And little tap, but just about gets away with that. What's the velocity like? Third fastest off the second fastest start.
5:25, 200s quicker than their first heat, and clean around that second kink.
Now these guys should comfortably beat Xiao Yijun. They were a couple of tenths clear, but they're in a very tight battle with the sleds ahead of them. Roman Heinrich, Brad Hall, and Yoon Jong-won. 4 sleds covered by a tenth.
Very nice upper part of the track.
Oh!
Just skids as I say it.
Yeah.
Well, commentator's jinx. There it was.
But still gets it nicely out of horseshoe and down through Devil's Dyke. 104.6 kilometers an hour, nearly slower than Xiao.
Good looking line there, early going into leap. A little middle late going into Günter Sachs, and that's why he touched the wall there coming out of Sachs.
Kind of holding a quarter of a second lead, but 4th in the speed traps. Has he got enough at the line? Yes, he did open up a little more. It's such a long way in that final split from the exit of Sachs all the way to the finish line. That's a 17-second split. So it's a lot to gain or lose down there.
22 boys, nice push.
There you go.
Slide, please.
He's actually misleading them. It was a 25, but never mind.
And here, coming out of Dixon, opens it up a little bit too soon. That's why he drifts away. And then here, coming at a leap, you can see him coming to the left side of the screen. You want to stay on the right side of the screen, going early into the curve every time. That makes it easier to drive around, and you don't have to do a lot of steering.
Yunjin Suk leads from Xiao of China with Vogt of Switzerland in third. 5 down, 15 to go in Moritz. Our 15th finisher in the first of our 2 heats here in Switzerland was Roman Heinrich with Dorian Otterville behind him. They had a 0.05 of a second advantage over current leader Suk In-jin from Korea.
Just a little touch on the wall coming out of that first kink. 5:22, 200s quicker than their first heat. And clean around the second kink. Tries to keep it middle of that straightaway going into wall. Good exit there.
And they had good velocity at the start as well. keeping the speed up, opening the margin up to 1300ths of a second now, and a nice run down out of Sunny.
Very clean line there, middle going into horseshoe. It should give him great height. It's exactly what he does.
He looked clean in the first heat as well, didn't he? But the speed wasn't there. This time it's a bit better, 1:05.6, quickest we've seen so far.
Yeah, it's looking good in the bottom part of the track. A little abrupter coming out of bridge, but
Yeah,
keeps
bridge
it in the
leap
middle.
sacks are a bit tricky to get the timing right. Top speed 1:37.6, so he'll have the lead by a good quarter second perhaps over Suk Yoon Jun of Korea. 2600ths, 1:07.67 slide for him, and that is 2500ths, 3500ths better than his first run.
And he's pleased with that run.
Yeah. Well, his first heat looked relatively neat and tidy as well, but it just didn't seem to have the speed, so maybe there was more going on than we were picking up.
Yeah.
Super descente. There you go. He's very happy with that.
Very happy with that run. It was a very clean-looking run. Looked like he had good control. Little airborne time there, but Snake 1 into Snake 2 has been really tricky, so a lot of sleds have been doing that. Nothing wrong with that at all. And here, coming out of horseshoe, and you can see he's very pleased with his run.
Yep. Happy boy, Roman Heinrich.
Checking the times with Hester there.
Well, he may be in the leader's box for another sled or two. This is a very tight group. Brad Hall and Greg Cackett, not in Brad's sled. You will see Brad's sled later, but they are in a brand new two-man Valna sled, which was raced last week by Dominik Dvorak of the Czech Republic.
And it has a very interesting design. Like most of the sleds have a little bit of a peak in the middle of it, and this one has two smaller peaks just besides the head of the driver, and has a flat top part, so it's aerodynamically a little bit different than what we're used to seeing.
So 5:17 start, second fastest getaway, but only the fourth momentum off that little skid in the first kink one.
And just a little skid and touch coming at a wall going into Snake 1.
Well, Brad was sixth in last year's race here. That's his best result in a two-man sled in St. Moritz. This is looking like a good run. It's a very different feeling sled, we gather, to the BTCs that he and Dvorak are used to.
A little bit high there at the end of Shamrock, just touching the wall before going into Devil's Dyke.
Speed is a couple of kilometers an hour shy. He's going to do well to hang on in front of Roman Heinrich. Was only 300ths ahead of the French sled in the first heat. He needs a super descente as well. And actually, it's looking just about as if he's going to hang on.
It's going to be very close.
Very close at the line. 1300ths. Well, he adds a tenth to his time.
Found some speed at the bottom of the track. Yeah. Clean lines there. Kept it in the middle. Here you can see his family.
And family. B for Brad, by the way, not for anything else that begins with B at the moment. So Brad Hall's team. And they move into the leader's box. Again, they're in this tight battle just around the fringes of the top 10.
Here, overdrives it just a little bit, and that gives him the pressure and makes him hit that right wall. And here, high at the end of Shamrock, just touching the wall before going into Devil's Dyke.
Hannes Valner was saying he's trying to adjust the steering to make it feel more like a BTC, so these test drivers can really get the most from that sled, but still it hasn't quite got the instinct. Next up, Yoon Jong-won of Korea. Seventh fastest start for him, ended up in 13th place.
Clean load from the brakeman. Gets around it, just taps in, and a little skid. 5:18, 100 slower than their first heat.
Now, normally he drives the white sled with gold highlights. He's already swapped to the darker sled in the four-man. This weekend he swapped in the two-man as well. So this is the sled that Suk has driven all season.
I don't know if it's his choice or maybe the good results from Suk in the last couple of races that gave him the opportunity to drive the white sled.
Well, and maybe it's the good results from Suk that have made one want to try this sled as well. You know, You've got to try the equipment, haven't you? See if it's different.
Exactly. Clean exit there coming out of Horseshoe, but not great speed going into Devil's Dyke here.
Well, right now, the dark sled is heading into a trap to fall behind the lighter sled. Normally one is just ahead of Suk, but at the moment he is behind him. This is only the 4th fastest run at the moment. This is not what he needed, only the 7th best speed. Whatever he's doing, whatever runner choice they made, has not worked. Only the 6th fastest run. Yeah. Air being sucked through teeth is very audible here. It's so quiet. Everything else, you can hear the drivers praying, and you can hear the coaches. Not happy with that, and one won't be either.
No.
Not only is he behind Suk, he's actually behind Xiao of China as well.
Yeah, dropped 4 spots.
And this is Wan's 48th two-man World Cup race. He's a former two-man World Cup champion, and he's behind the Chinese driver who is in his 6th World Cup start.
Yeah, he hasn't found his rhythm yet this season. Had some good races in Eagles.
Yeah, he's running out of season to find it, isn't he? One more track, 2 more tracks if you count the World Championships. Well, maybe that's where they are trying to sort this out now so they can peak then. Dominik Dvorak of the Czech Republic. I don't know who's driving his sled. It might be in Eagles, but he's in Brad Hall's sled and battling now Brad Hall for the lead. This is going to be an odd-looking run for Brad in the leader's box, watching his own sled try to beat him.
And big skid coming out of that first kink, and it's just... this costs so much speed. 5:13 equal their first start, but that's only the 8th fastest speed out of the fastest start.
We were talking about this in the break between. This is where you need at Monty's Bolt a little road you can pull off to and go, okay, I'm parked now, I'm done.
Yeah, as a driver, when you feel this, you just know it's done. There's nothing much you can do.
Little parking lot right there would help.
Skid there as well, and out of Nash, out of Sunny, and he's gonna bleed a lot of time now. Long on telephone. Still has decent speed coming there in Shamrock Devil's Dyke.
So he's got good speed and no control. Are we saying that maybe he's got fat runners on and it's just skidding around more than he wants?
Well, I think this sled is proving to be really fast.
Yeah.
Even with driving mistakes, it's still producing really good speed. He's the fastest at the bottom with this.
And again, when Brad drives it, it skids around a lot. And I thought maybe it's just the way Brad's driving it or the way he sets it up. But the Czechs drop into 4th place with 11 sleds to go. So Dominik Dvorak, his best here, a 10th spot. He was looking to move up and beat that, but that was a horror story. And Anne, I know you feel the sympathy.
This hurts so much.
Because you had 2 of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to remind you.
Yeah, I know. Well, when you make those mistakes, you're angry at yourself. You fail yourself, you fail your team. It's really disappointing, and he just gets around that first kink too far, and then breaks into a skid, tries to, he's really beating himself up. Yeah, it's not a fun feeling, and you know you can, he did a good run at the bottom part of the track, but it's just, you cannot make up for that mistake anymore.
Well, next up, a World Cup rookie as a driver, Mikkel Kwonen, having his first ever drive, gets in and gets it around 5:14 start.
And just a tiny touch on the left side, coming out of the first kink, and great speed.
They ran so long, he got in so late. I thought he was going to be all over the road, but he managed to hold it together. Marco Tanner, his brakeman, having his first two-man World Cup race in 26 months.
He's been doing a lot of two-man Europa Cup races with a little drift there as well, just like he did in the first run, and then gets late into Nash, taps before going into Dixon.
It is tidy though. He's just clinging on to a slender lead over Brad Hall. He had 1400s from the first heat. It's down to nothing. They are tied, and he's in the red. Now he needs the speed, and he did have speed in the first run.
He definitely found speed in the first run there at the bottom of the track, but he's up quite high in his sled.
He's a tall guy.
Well, they're all tall guys, but I think this is just showing that he's still a learning pilot. And
okay, 2200s back. Are we saying more mistakes? And this is always the question here, because it should be getting faster. It sort of did, but later than we expected in the day.
Yeah.
Is it now starting to sag a bit? Is it starting maybe to get slower?
I don't think so. I think this was a little bit of driving mistakes. He just missed that opening there going into Nash, and then late high drifting out of Nash, tapping before Dixon, and then he had to do a lot of driving to keep it low.
just off the wall.
Yeah.
Well, still, fringes of the top 10. Not a bad first day at the office for Mikael Quonen. 10 down, 10 to go. Brad Hall leads from Roman Heinrich and Mikael Quonen here in Moritz in Switzerland. Quonen and Tanner came in for their headshots first time in the World Cup this season, came in yesterday, and they were laughing at my pronunciation of Tanner. They said, Tanner? I said, well, yeah. How else do you say it? Pollen. Okay, all right.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, the Swiss Deutsch swallow almost every vowel, and everything's a bit more rounded in sing-song.
It's a very interesting language, though. But
yeah. And even Quonen, I said, how do you say it? Quonen. Okay, all right.
Quonen,
it's anglicised. I can't do Swiss Deutsch accents, but there you go. But a good run from them, and you know, no worse than 13th in your first World Cup in a field of a lot of talent. That's not a bad place to be. You can see Ivo de Bruyne lining up. See the ice box just down there as well. The sleds sit on there, the runners on there for a minute, is it, or 90 seconds?
Yeah, a minute. There's actually 2 ice boxes this time because it's so warm. They don't want to ruin the ice, so they cool the runners before we go off. 1 minute. About 2 sleds before you go off, you have to stand on the box, and then 1 more minute during the run of the girl or guy just before you. So that the runners get a little bit cooler and it doesn't damage the track as much.
Man in the orange jacket is Hannes Wallner, the sled builder. So he's the man who's watching the action. There's the French 4-man crew. Coach Nicky Estrati there with the cap on. Former World Cup racer. And wherever you are here, whatever sort of day you've had or aren't having, it's not a bad place to be, is it? The views are pretty impressive.
The views are beautiful.
Yeah.
But it is a tricky track, and some drivers love it and some don't.
Yeah. I know that Alana Myers-Taylor definitely loves it. She's had 4 straight wins now. The only reason she wasn't competing this year is she's waiting for baby T to be born, and Alana having her baby shower today. So good luck to her, and especially to Nick Taylor with that one.
The track is clear.
Moritz in Switzerland, the only natural track left still in existence, and today there's a question mark over how long it may last. 10 sleds down, 10 to go in our 2-man bobsleigh World Cup race. Martin Haven and Anne van Nieuwenhuis watching the USA's Hunter Church and Josh Williamson. Now, this is the only track in Europe that Hunter has been to before. He raced here in the Junior Worlds in 2018.
Yeah, only in a 2-man though. So his 4-man runs were his first ones here. 5:23, little tap around that first kink, but sets him up straight.
Now, for a kid who grew up learning to drive in Lake Placid, which is busy, always like big steers, lots of pressure, this must be like trying to do meditation.
Definitely the bottom part of the track is very soft and you don't have to do a lot of driving. The upper part of the track this season has been quite busy as well, so that must feel similar, but the bottom part of the track is definitely free-flowing and not a lot of driving.
Well, he got great speeds down into the forest here, off Horseshoe. He's a 1/10 of a second behind, but 1:05.5 is the second fastest sled we've seen. And this is where he started to come back up the order in the first heat.
Definitely, and it's looking very clean as well. Good speed there, nice middle line going into leap. Middle line again.
Fastest sled we've seen. He should have the best speed at the bottom of the track. 1:37.8, only second to Dominic Dvorak. And across the line, is he in front of Brad Hall? He is not. So Brad Hall is going to register at least a top 10 run. And Hunter Church, not second, not third, slips to 4th, a quarter second back.
I don't know if that has anything to do with the 2-minute break, if that affected the track at all. Because that was not a bad drive. Yeah, that's what he says. Like, he doesn't really understand what
Well, even if there
happened.
hadn't been a break, there would have been only 1 more sled down. It wouldn't have carved the ice so badly. It's just... Again, you know, you had to gamble yesterday on the previous days of weather on what today was going to go, along with what your 150 different weather apps would tell you. So sometimes you're going to be out in the sweet spot for the sled.
Yeah.
Well, next up is Maxim Anjanov. He was the 20th starter in our field today, and he came down with a really strong run into 9th place off only the 16th fastest start. His best World Cup race here in 6th position 4 seasons ago now, in fact. That was during the European Championships in February 2016. It's been a while since he's been back in the World Cup.
Oh, and Long there on that first kink puts him into that tap as well, very close to the left wall there.
Now in the first he looked really smooth. He's having a bit more of a meander down the straight, but again, 9th fastest start so far, 2nd best velocity. So there's something that he and veteran 33-year-old Kirill Antuk, his brakeman, are definitely doing right at the start.
Yeah, very efficient load must be then, and a good drive around kink 1, even though he had that little taps there going into Dixon as well. Late going into Horseshoe. Controls the height.
Now this is where he found speed again in the first heat. He's not as quick there as our race leader Brad Hall, and he's already 2800s behind.
A little late there going into Nameless.
He's not coming back from there.
This is a great exit, and a little late going into Gunter Sachs. A little bit.
Double tap down the straight, that takes speed away. It's only 6th position at the moment on the split times, and across the line, it is 6th position. Brad Hall and Brad.
They've had so much fun in the winner's box this season already.
They've spent a lot of time there.
Wow.
108.23. He came down 107.85 in the first heat. That's half a second slower.
I don't know if it's the sun that's going down or
Hunter Church
something
came
happening.
down 1200 slower. He came down half a second slower. So it's not just what's happening with the track. But they had such good velocity from the start.
And then here,
yeah,
you can see he went in late into Gunter Sachs and that late height, dropping out too much, hitting right and left. Just robs him of the speed.
Well, next up, one of the big surprises of the first heat, which was the second of our Chinese sleds, Li Chai-jun.
Around that first kink and now waits to get his push bar in when he's far away from the bankina, not to hit that push bar on the side of the track.
And he drove like a veteran, not of 6 World Cups, which he is, but of 60 World Cups. And if that hasn't cursed him, then I'm riding my luck. Little wiggle there into Snake.
And a very abrupt entrance into Snake too.
I think I've done for him, haven't I? Oh, he's making all the mistakes there are to make in the second heat. This is not the way he wanted it to go.
Little touch there, pushes him away, late going in.
Huge height.
But gets a clean exit.
Yeah, super brave. Now, can that speed him up through the forest? We're not getting the speeds anymore from the sled, which is a real shame. He's only tied with Brad Hall, but he did have very good speed at the bottom. How is it going to go? It's a long, long way to the line. He's in the red. Is he going to be in front? Nice and clean from Martineau to Portago and at the line. 1400s back. Well, they're starting to get a little party going there. What is that? Dracula Club opened early down in the leader's box. 50th anniversary of the Dracula Club, the legendary nightclub at the top of the track where the start house is built. Built originally by Gunter Sachs, the German millionaire playboy and bobsledder.
Well, Brad Hall already caught six sleds, but in his slipstream also Romain Heinrich got 6 sleds. So that's why they're having a party there in the winner's box.
Well, that has the high jump award of the day so far. That's the closest to the woodwork. And Lee only in 3rd place with 7 to go. So that's a top 10 finish for Lee, and that is a big result for him. His best so far was 13th in Koenigsegg, so he's on a big upward crest. Well, what about this man? From the Netherlands, Ivo de Bruin and Dennis Venker. 7th place in the first heat, already in their best position so far in St. Moritz. Now, hold it together.
5:22, 200s faster. He had a very clean run around that first kink in the first heat. Now just touched the wall, but still going straight, going into wall.
Nice and early onto wall.
Yeah, just a little touch before going into Snake 1. And long on there. The controls it in Sunny. Good exit there. Very clean line through Nash and Dixon. Middle going into Horseshoe.
Had 2300s over Brad Hall from the first heat. That is 0.2 of a second.
And good speed, a little high there in Shamrock.
Yeah, that's about as quick as the sled that Brad was in.
Yeah, and he's right up and with that top speeds. Oh, little drift there coming out of bridge, but
he's going to hold his advantage, isn't he? Ivo looking set to take the lead of the race now with 6 sleds to go. Top speed of all, just a little drift up to the wall. Still going to be in front, hits the wall, but he's in front. Not by much, gave away a lot more speed than he will have wanted to at the bottom. But that's a big result for Ivo de Bruin of the Netherlands.
And they're going to be so pleased with that. They've been looking for that breakout race.
Yeah. 11th last year, his best ever race here. His best
so
ever
pumped.
World Cup result, 7th place in Altenburg. He will be no worse than 7th here. That is a huge personal day for Ivo de Bruin.
And highest speed at the bottom of the track. They know this Eurotech sled has been fast. They've just been testing new things with it, and now they found this setup that's working really well for them. Great lines from Ivo.
Iedereen thuis! Lekker jongens!
6 sleds to go. Ivo de Bruin, Brad Hall and Roman Heinrich, the top 3, covered by 0.2 of a second. Lee of China in 4th place, 2100s back. Next up is Nico Walter with Malta Schwenzfeier. Nico the winner here 2 seasons ago with Christian Poser behind him. Did not claim a medal on this track last year.
Runs it very long. Oh, and his brakeman is very long as well. Gets around it, just avoids the wall. 500s improvement on their first started, so that's a great getaway for these 2 men.
And good velocity, 6th fastest start, but ooh, 3rd fastest velocity, and he just got tram-lined in somebody else's runner marks there.
Well, you could see he was drifting a little bit to the left and wanted to avoid that left wall, and then just got to the right side immediately.
He got neatly out of wall, sneaked through Snake, off Sonny. Does he get cleanly through Nash and Dixon? Little tap.
A little drift and a little tap going into Dixon, indeed.
Not great height. What's he got in the forest? 105, 104.4.
1 kilometer down compared to what Ivo de Bruin had in the previous
Now he's in danger from Ivo de Bruin and Brad Hall. They're only 700s apart. He's going to beat both of them or neither of them perhaps. Where's the speed? It's not in the sled.
It is in the sled.
139, phenomenal numbers at the bottom. Wow, Nico Walter, he is going to streak away into the lead.
Wow, he found the speed at the bottom of the track. It looked like it was getting away from him, but then found it anyway.
A couple of hundreds slower than his first run. Ivo de Bruin 100 quicker than his first run. That's 2 really consistent runs from Ivo, so he's in 2nd place now, but no guarantee that he might not move up a spot.
And here we can see around that 2nd kink, he's going close to the left wall, doesn't want to hit it, and then takes it over to the right side.
Is he like bumping his backside against the seat just to shift the sled? I mean, the runners didn't move. That's a body weight movement, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe the brakeman made a little movement. Maybe it was just his head, his body.
Yeah, Nico leads from Ivo and Brad with 5 to go. Final 5 sleds, round 6 of the BMW IBSF 2-man bobsleigh World Cup here in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Justin Cripps and Cam Stones on the track. Martin Haven and Anne van Nieuwenhuis watching the action. 5:11, that's a big start.
And just a tiny touch and tiny drift coming around that first kink.
2nd fastest velocity.
Clean line coming out of wall early into Snake 1. Little jump into Snake 2, like we've seen a lot of sleds do. A great exit there out of Sunny.
65th World Cup race for Justin Cripps, his 61st as a driver in the 2-man.
Medium high line there in Horseshoe. Long on telephone. Good speed coming out of Shamrock.
Best result here, 4th place 2 years ago, just off the podium. Can he move up a spot?
Very clean lines at the bottom of the track in these 4 right-hand curves.
Huge speed, faster even than Nico Walter, so he will take the lead by a big margin. That's nearly half a second. 107.26, not a new track record, but that would have left him in 4th place rather than 5th in the first heat. That might be enough to move closer to a medal spot.
Great looking run. just a tiny touch there in the beginning after kink 1, but the rest of the run was looking really smooth. Here going into horseshoe, not the highest we've seen. And then you can see him take it off the curve and then get it back to neutral before you get off. So you have the nice transition going into telephone. Good job.
Thanks for watching.
Nice run from Justin Cripps and Cameron Stones, leading with 4 to go. And in the top 4, perhaps a surprise, Russia's Alexei Stulnev and Ilya Malik. Alexei, 55 hundredths off the lead. His advantage over Justin Cripps was 19 hundredths of a second. He is going to need another top draw drive to stay in front. 4th place here, better than his best ever finish of 5th in St. Moritz. Ooh, just holds. He had that kind of forerunner skid in the first heat as well. There's something different about how he takes that first kink.
Yeah.
And look here again, he needs a periscope, doesn't he? He's ducking his head. Every 100th counts.
Well, we've seen him doing it in Koenigsee as well to get his head as low as possible.
Yeah. Well, you're famous for doing it at the finish line. You need to think about it down the straight as well. You daren't move, though. That's the problem, isn't it? He's been very brave, even moving at all.
There are long straights in Segulda. I might try it there.
Yeah. Down to horseshoe, yeah. Sooner you than me. 800s in front from 1900s in the first heat. 105.8. That's the fastest sled we've seen, and this is where he found the pace in the first heat. 116.9, quicker than anybody.
Great lines, but he is not closing he's not extending his gap though.
But the speed is big, 600s in front. Again, that's what the ducking the head is all about. He ducks again, 500s at the line.
It's a very close one.
His best ever finish, guaranteed here in St. Moritz. 5th place previously, 4th place at least today. And in the end, in this sport, where you're racing the watch and the mountain, that's what it's all about.
I hear the tiny touch coming at a wall and driving it around Dixon. Nice and middle, going a little early into horseshoe. Good height there, and then driving it around.
Big Ilya buried in the back. Alexei Stulnev's best result here, his best ever World Cup results are a pair of 4th places. He's going to at least equal that. But to get a medal for the first time in 2-man, he needs somebody to make a mistake, and we do not have many mistake makers here. Oskars Kibermanis and Martis Miknis, bronze last year, 3rd after the first heat today. Hall rides it high, and again, like Stulnev, that four square drift, but a 5.06 getaway and best velocity. Exactly what we expect from the Latvians.
Yeah, 100 slower than their first start, but great speed coming out of that first kink. Ooh, and just tries to avoid that wall. You can see his runner moving, going into snake 1. Good exit there in Sunny. Nice and middle to Nash and Dixon.
He had 1800s in hand over current leader Stulnev from the first heat. That gap is 3800s.
Medium high line and great speed coming there. Shamrock to Devil's Dykes, 106, fastest sled we've seen so far.
Yeah. Again, he really makes this flow, doesn't he? He's driving himself into the medals, and he was only a whisker behind Francesco Friedrich in the battle for silver as well.
Tiny wobble there.
Move up the order, needs huge speed, 3rd fastest, and a little rub on the line, 107.29. Wasn't a long time in the leader's box for Alexei Stulnev and Ilya Malik. Still a career high, equaling result for them, guaranteed. Kibermanis, though, is in the medals again here. Well, his only ever World Cup race win in 4-man came here. He's never won in 2-man, but bronze last year. Look at the start, hitting the handle hard.
I think his injury is in the past now, pushing a 5.05, 5.06.
Yeah, it's funny to think that 2 weeks ago he was sitting in all week.
And now he's back to pushing the fastest push times.
And Martis Miknis was still in the top 12 pushes on his own, with his driver sitting in. 2 to go. Francesco Friedrich and Alexander Schuller have never not won a race together in 4 starts. Is this the first? Rides it high, huge start record, but rides it very high. A double clatter in kink 1.
And just like I predicted, they were looking at something to clean that up because they want to be the fastest pusher on the circuit.
He just has this determination to be the best at everything. Friedrich, 2-man, 4-man, starting, driving. And generally, he pulls it off. And this is looking tidier than the first run. He's a 10th ahead of Kiebermanis.
Yeah, a little wobbly in the first Kings and wall, but now it's looking clean.
Well, like Torsten Margus said last week when he nearly crashed, it's because he's human. Sometimes you forget. 105.7, not as quick as Kiebermanis. The gap will come down.
Well, from a 10th to 1300s.
Yeah, it's sticking at 1300s. Needs big speed. Cripps was 139.5. 138.9. Ooh, this could be close. How close at the line? Don't touch the wall. Big height in the final corner. 107.26 to take at least a silver medal. But again, 1200 slower than his first heat. Kiebermanis was slower than his first heat.
And you can see the sportsmanship there. It was Kiebermanis who was showing him the one finger, telling him he's in the lead, he's in first place. And a 5:02.
I know.
It's a great start. Ran it a little longer than his first run, and that's why he's long on that first kink and then hitting and skidding.
But fails to panic, and that's the key here. He knows it's coming. He's already dealt with it before he gets the skid.
Good height, and then you can see just touching his runners, bringing it down back to neutral to go diagonal into telephone.
Great fluency from Francesco Friedrich, our race leader, with 1 to go. And the remaining sled, bronze 2 years ago, silver last year, the winner 3 years ago. Johannes Lochner back in a 2-man sled for the first time since Lake Placid in December. First heat lead for Hansi and Christopher Weber, 33 hundredths of a second. And they start 5:09. That's good enough.
And a very soft load of the brakeman. Didn't want to rock the set going around that first kink, so he was clean through there. It's a little bit down on speed though compared to Francesco.
Third fastest start, third velocity through the first corner, but it was how smooth he drove in the first heat that made the difference.
And it's looking very smooth now again. Really great exit out of wall. Just touches there, but stays on the right side, goes late into Dixon. Flops off, but keeps it middle.
Just avoids the wall into horseshoe. Okay, so here we go, quarter of a second up. Let's look at the speed. Needs 106, hasn't got it. 105, just about.
He's down in speed, but has a big lead. It's coming down that lead. He's 1 kilometer
That's
down.
where Friedrich was. Kiebermanis was quicker, but Friedrich wasn't the fastest sled. This is going to be close at the line. Johannes Lochner only 9th fastest at the line. It's going to be him or Francesco Friedrich who wins it, and it's Lochner. Holds on to win. Francesco Friedrich and Alexander Schuller. Schuller now finds what it's like not to win in a 2-man sled with Francesco. And Hansi is back. They were jubilant to lead the first heat. He and Christopher Weber are our race winners in St. Moritz. He's had 3 2-man races this season, gold, silver, gold. How can you even think of not having him in the team in the World Championships? Oh, Christopher, I think it means more to his brakeman than it does to Hansi, and it means a lot to Johannes. Wow.
He's so pleased with that. Back in the 2-man, back with a win.
Things last night when I was looking at the entry list that I didn't think I was going to have to look at was how much has Francesco Friedrich lost by in a 2-man race? Because that might be one of the biggest victories over Francesco Friedrich for a long while. Johannes Lochner claims the win here, and it was a really great pair of drives.
Really great pair of drives. The second one, he had a little mistake in Sunny, and that robbed him of some speed down the bottom of the track, but he had enough of a lead to hold on. Lost a little bit of time compared to Francesco, but great drive.
So Johannes Lochner wins from Francesco Friedrich and Oskars Kibermanis. Alexei Stulnev, a career equaling fourth. In fifth place, Justin Cripps. Sixth place, Nico Walter. A winner here 2 years ago. Brad Hall rising up to 8th position in a sled that he'd never driven before this week. I think Hannes Wallner might be pretty happy with the development work in that new Wallner two-man sled. And there are the rest of our finishers here in St. Moritz. Well, remarkably for Johannes Lochner, his 29th two-man World Cup start. That's his 4th win, and 2 of them have come in 3 races this season. So he is, you've got to say, he is in good form.
Yeah, he is in very good form, and I think he's very happy he got the chance to race in a two-man here again. I was talking to one of his brakemen earlier, and he said if we would have been able to race in every two-man race, we wanted to have a podium finish in every, each and every one of them. And I think they had a fair shot at doing that, but it's just their program is so strong. And that's also what Richard Ulsner showed us. He did 3 two-man races, got 3rd, 4th, and 5th place, so he's right in that medal mix as well.
Absolutely.
So it's just really tough to have such a strong team and only have 3 spots for 4 great drivers.
That's why René Spies gets the big bucks, because he's got to make these calls, make these choices. And you're right, you know, at Christmas, Johannes Lochner and Francesco Friedrich were tied with a win and a silver apiece in two-man. So, you know, you would never think, yeah, of course, Lochner's not going to race after Christmas, but he got beaten in a selection race, and those are the rules. So now they've sent Richard Ulsner off to try and win the Junior World Championships in two-man for a 5th straight season, which would give him a guaranteed spot, and then they can decide to send their 3 regular drivers. Friedrich is a given, because he's the reigning world champion, and then you want to send Lochner because he's on fine form, and you want to send Nico Walter because it's his home track, and he's certainly capable of taking a medal there.
And so is Richard Ulsner. It's also his home track. He did really well there on selection races, so he has a fair chance of medaling there too. The
drama for any species is if Ulsner doesn't win the Junior Worlds, then he has 4 drivers and only 3 spots, and he has to make that tough choice. But right now, Johannes Lochner is making life a lot harder for his coach. 2 races remain in the two-man bobsleigh World Cup season. Francesco Friedrich still leads from Justin Cripps. In 3rd place now, Oskars Kibermanis overhauling Michael Vogt. And if you look just down outside the top 10 of Brad Hall, you will see running up on the rails is Johannes Lochner. He started the day in 16th, finishes it in 12th with a win, the 4th of his career. And Van Nieuwenhuis, from the first moment he got out of the first kink on this track, it looked like he had what it took.
Oh, definitely. And definitely his first run was so clean, so much speed in his sled. Made a little mistake in the second run, but had enough to hold on to, and then just let his sled fly. Good lines, good speed. It's just amazing to see him back in his two-man and doing so well.
Yeah, not just in amongst the medals or with a shot, but winning, going away. 33 hundredths ahead of Francesco Friedrich from the first heat. And Oskars Kibermanis, 2nd bronze medal in 2 years for he and Matis Miknes. Oskars is teasing Hansi with the champagne. There is Francesco Friedrich on the left, the tall figure of Alexander Schuller. They look just as happy as if they'd won it. But I think the happiest people in the Swiss Alps today are those 2, Johannes Lochner and his brakeman Christopher Weber. Big, big statement from Hansi. Don't you dare contemplate leaving me out for the Worlds. Well, that is it for our two-man and women's day here in St. Moritz. Join Anne Van Nieuwenhuis, me, Martin Haven, tomorrow for the four-man action, the Blue Ribbon event on the world's greatest racetrack. Until then, from all of us here in St. Moritz, goodbye. We'll see you at 10 tomorrow morning, Swiss time.